be on, but they wanted us to record it for them.
Oh, okay, good.
There we go. Now we can see it, Tony.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Somebody making margaritas.
I was grinding my coffee.
Okay.
All right. I guess we can go ahead and get started. You want to introduce people?
Oh,
You run this, not me.
Nancy's the boss, not me.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Nancy Burkhart in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and Rand is sitting here next to me. Next, we have Skip and Linda, and they're in Omaha. And Francis is making us coffee, apparently.
Yes.
Good morning. Where are you from, Francis?
Kansas City.
Yay. Kansas City?
Yes.
Very good. How's the weather in Kansas City?
Looks to be pretty nice today.
Hi, Francis.
Hi.
Good. Good morning. Bob Schlickburn is in West Point.
Wait, Bob.
No, I'm Bob Schlickburn from Beamer, Nebraska.
Beamer.
Well, West Point's close.
Well, it's one of those.
It's about 5 miles from West Point, but yeah.
Well, it's a little hike, yeah.
Yeah, 8 miles.
Okay. And then I've got, whoops. And I've got David Thompson. And David is here in Council Bluffs also.
Yep, I'm with the National Park Service.
Right.
And I manage a couple programs out of the regional office here in Omaha. And then I'm also part of the taxi group here. So I kind of help with putting some of this together with Nancy's leadership.
And I've got Lori on my screen. Lori, where are you from?
I'm from Kansas City. I'm one of the co-leaders of our support group.
Very good. I'm glad you could be with us this morning.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited.
And I'm going to come back to Kimberlyn. Got Sharon and Kent Hardell. They're from Lincoln. Got Tony Schlickburn. You're from Beamer too?
Yep.
Okay. And see who's next. Michael Lafferty. Michael, where are you from?
I'm from St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis. Very good. It's good to
I
have you.
like Nebraska. It's nice.
Good to have you this morning. And we've got Judy.
Morning.
I never can pronounce your last name, Judy.
Durkheising, it's okay.
Durkheising. It's a tough one. And she is our executive director here at Nebraska Ataxia. Is that everyone?
Yeah, we have somebody that just joined via phone. I'm not sure who that is.
I see that. We're going to go ahead and get started with Kimberlyn. Kimberlyn is with the National Park Service and works out of Jewel Cave. And Kimberlyn is going to take us on a tour of the cave this morning. So I'm going to let Kimberlyn take over.
Let's see here.
So
I do have like a little mini PowerPoint first, and then we can get to the little videos. Unless we want to do the videos first.
Let me make sure. PowerPoint's fine first. Let me make sure that I give you access to share. Hold on a second here.
Sure. Yeah, I've never tried a Zoom call before, so it's a little bit of a learning experience.
Really, that's your first one? God, it seems like everything Zoom nowadays.
Yeah, here we use Microsoft Teams.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've done like a handful of calls on that, so
Not
pretty
too.
similar but different.
Hi, Bill.
So are you on a computer or an iPad?
Yes,
A
computer.
So at the bottom of your screen, if you mouse over your screen, you should have a share option in the middle.
Yep, share screen.
Yep.
Okay. That and that. Full enough.
There we go.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Looks like that's gonna work. So welcome everybody to a virtual tour of Jewel Cave National Monument. As you may have heard, my name is Kimberlyn Curtis, and I'm a park ranger out here at Jewel Cave. This is my third season out here. It's the only park that I've worked at, so I've definitely done a lot of our tours, and in my little picture here, it's our wild caving tour, which is definitely wild and fun. But kind of before we delve into the videos and kind of your virtual video tour of the cave, just to kind of touch on a little bit of the significance. Jewel Cave was designated as a national monument back in 1908 by President Theodore Roosevelt. And so whenever the Antiquities Act was made back in 1906, Theodore Roosevelt got really, really excited about making national monuments. So our neighbor Devil's Tower was #1. We were number 13, but we were the first cave park to become a national monument. And the interesting thing is, he never actually visited our cave. He just took the words of those who had been here and thought, this sounds like a pretty cool place, so we should definitely protect it. And there's much more to the cave and our grounds here than just, the tour experiences. So before we check out the videos, here's our lovely Canyons Trail area. But this here is all on kind of the surface of our cave. So in total, right now, we have 208.5 miles that are known, which is pretty impressive. We're the third longest known cave network in the entire world, second longest in the US. And it's pretty much everywhere that you can see in that photo. There's cave network underneath that. And so just imagine like a giant, Tupperware full of spaghetti noodles where all those noodles are intermixed and interwoven. Just imagine that going on with cave passageways below the surface there. But we do have a lot of unique areas, like our historic area. Up until the 1960s, 1970s, this was the place. So there is a sign that was put up back in the 1930s saying that Jewel Cave is a small cave. Joke's on them. Like I mentioned, we already have 208.5 miles. We're the third longest in the world. But up until our current visitor center was completed in the 1970s, this little cabin here was the ranger station, the ranger quarters, the gift shop, everything you could possibly want about the cave. But we do have our Canyons Trail here as well. And you can see in the photo on the left, that's kind of the canyon that leads down to that entranceway. But on the right is our historic entrance. So currently we do have historic lantern tours that do go on those kind of old school routes that would have been where visitors have gone from early in the 1900s all the way through present day. And then we also have things that are not quite as cool, like the Jasper Fire. So this was an arson fire that was back in August of 2000, and it was started a few miles down the road heading towards Wyoming. And so as you can see, there's our visitor center in the foreground. You have all that smoke in the background. And even in this photo here, it was just complete and utter devastation. So over 83,000 acres were burned in total. about 90% of our monument boundaries here, but fortunately, our historic cabin did not get burned to the ground, but this burn scar here does shape a lot of what we're seeing up on the surface. Not necessarily, you come here and you think, oh, well, fires and caves, kind of two different entities to a degree, but it does create kind of a different environment for visitors to check out. And plus, it also brings a lot of wildlife. So we see a ton of deer, and this time of year as well, we have the bighorn sheep. We've been seeing them quite frequently over the past several weeks. And so we have a picture of the rams there. We have tons and tons of little pine squirrels, and sometimes in the evenings, if you're lucky, you can also hear the coyotes. So,
do antelope ever move into that area?
Not really.
No.
Right now, we do have some rogue cows that broke through a Forest Service fence. So we are trying to send the cows back home and get them out of our monument because everybody thinks they're seeing bison scat, and it's cows. We don't want them here. But yeah, the antelope, the bison, they're more towards like Custer State Park and Winds Cave. So more or less you can hike safely without, having to go around a corner and be like, oh man, there's a bison in my way. But the pronghorns, I've seen them kind of more towards Wyoming, and I've seen them Custer State Park, Wind Cave area, but not really here, which is interesting because you'd think they'd want to hang out, but I've never seen them. And kind of likewise with the coyotes, I've heard of them, but I haven't really seen any yet this year. And we even have mountain lions, which I hope I never see out here. So our surface area, while most people do come for cave tours, it is a really great area for all these critters to hang out, and also for wildflower viewing in the summertime. Right now, though, everything's kind of dried to a crisp, so there's not many flowers that are out there. But it is kind of an alternate thing to check out. And plus the bats. We have about 1,500 bats that hibernate here in the wintertime. So that historic entrance I had shown a few slides earlier, that is where they hibernate. So that gate that was on front of our cave entrance, they can fly in and out, and then typically in the kind of late winter, early spring, our resource management team goes in and they count the bats. And it's really important just to get those statistics. And plus, since white nose syndrome was found here back in 2018, it's super important to see how that's been kind of impacting our bat populations. So for those who aren't familiar with white nose syndrome, it's a fungus, and it will kind of attach itself to the bats' faces and their wings. And what happens is that the bats get itchy, they wake up mid-hibernation, and then they start zooming around. Well, if it's January and you're in South Dakota, there's probably not very many insects for you to eat, and so frequently the bats will end up dying. But if the weather warms up and the bats can get out in the sunshine and they get food, they can stay safe and they can survive it. But that's why those bat counts are super important. But we have one of kind of the largest hibernating colonies in the area. And now for the exciting part. Everybody's excited to see the virtual tour of the cave here. But we do have a lot of different formations, as well as things you see on a typical cave tour, like stalagmites and stalactites. But this photo here kind of shows what you normally get to see on one of our cave tours. And so this is covered in what we call nailhead spar. So it's nice and flat on top like a nailhead, or kind of like your thumb. And these are the jewels of Jewel Cave. So we don't have emeralds or rubies or diamonds or anything like that. But these crystals, they're made out of calcite, not quartz. Quartz on like a hardness scale where diamonds are 10s. Quartz is about 3 and quartz is about an 8, calcite's about a 3. So it's a pretty weak mineral, so to say, but it is still what covers our entire cave. And generally, the deeper down you go into the cave, the thicker those crystals start to build up. But you'll get to see kind of more of that in the videos as well. But we have kind of a wide variety of areas where We have, you know, our caver here, and there's ropes, and it's a big, wide open room. Versus me on our wild caving tour, where you get to go through little teeny tiny areas. Like for this tour, and with many areas that our cavers do get to go through, our wild caving block is 8.5 by 24 inches. So if you can't fit, you are allowed to go on that tour. Just imagine like 2 pieces of printer paper, they're taped together, and that's what you get to fit through. So there are areas in the cave that are super tiny like that, and even smaller that our explorers get to go through. And then there is kind of another view of our crystals there. So these are more of those nailhead spar crystals, just a little closer up. So you can see how they're, you know, a little bit blunt on the top, but the colors we're seeing staying them as well. The iron, that will leave kind of a reddish, orangish, brownish color, whereas the manganese, it's black and sticky like tar. That'll leave gray and kind of bluish colors. So as you know, we watch the videos and look through the photos, you know, definitely kind of keep that in mind, because they're not, you know, nice pure white crystals like how we would more or less envision them to be. And then these are kind of my favorite types of crystals. So these are dog tooth spar. They're also made out of calcite, but they're nice and pointy like a dog's canine tooth. So these are almost forms like the inside of a geode, where the crystals, they'll build up on the insides of those walls and then kind of start to build inward, versus the nailhead spar, which kind of goes outward. So these pockets are a little bit harder to find, but generally they do have that really nice white, you know, pure crystal looking color. And then we have our typical stalagmites, stalactites, flowstone. So all of the formations there in this photo here are off of our scenic tour, but this would form in wet areas of the cave. So most of our known cave network is dry, but there are a few areas like the formation room, or like this spot here in the tape room, where you do get those formations that you think of on, you know, typical cave. And then we have the bacon. So the bacon here, this is a drapery, so it's still formed out of flowstone there. But this one, it does have the iron in it. So that's what those little streaks are that kind of give it the meaty goodness. And then the calcite, which is a bit clearer, you know, gives it kind of the fatty part of the bacon. So that's just kind of a small little lightning round of what you can see in the cave. But there's definitely plenty of things to check out, especially on close observation. Whenever I do tours, I always tell people to be creative, look around, observe, you see what you can see, because the way that I view the cave and the way that you view the cave, it's probably not the same. But it's still, you know, something where everybody can, I feel, be, you know, entertained, whether they're visiting virtually or in real life. But we are, you know, different than visiting Wind Cave versus visiting a cave on the East Coast. So it's really cool just to see, you know, what we do have to offer versus those other tours. And then with that, I think we are ready for the little videos. So that's my little lightning round. Here's what you see up top. Here's what you see down below. So I think with that, we are good to go with the cave exploration videos.
All right, so I muted everybody during the presentation there. Does anybody have any questions before we start the video?
So can you tell us, you probably did tell us about the bats, about how many bats there are?
Yeah, we have about 1,500.
And can you tell me why we want to have bats?
Yeah, so that's kind of the great diversity we see, is either people say bats are incredible or bats are scary, I don't like them, get them out of my attic. So our bats here, while they don't really live in our cave over the summer, well, you may see a few of them if you're on like a lantern tour, They are super useful to have around because they're beneficial for night pollination for various flowers, as well as eating really, really pesky mosquitoes and gnats and all those nasty things. That's one of the things I love about the Black Hills is that it is really hard, especially if you're in this area, to find like dumb mosquitoes and all those critters you don't want biting you. And a lot of that I would undoubtedly say is thanks to the bats. Sure, you know, they might want to roost in your attic, but in general, they are really good for kind of keeping control of the smaller things we might not think about.
So, Kimberlyn, I have 2 videos. Which one would you like us to show? I have the guided tour and then the exploring the unknown tour.
So if you want to do exploring the unknown first,
Okay.
so I think whenever Bradley was coordinating it, the idea was watching that one and then the Ranger Guide Tour one, because that does kind of highlight, I think, a little bit better the various experiences.
Okay.
So yeah, and then if anybody does think of any other questions, I do have one final slide which just say questions. So if you do see something in the video that you're like, what is this? Or you think of something else, I guess just let me know when we're done.
All right, let me get that going here. All right, I'm going to mute everybody again while we watch this, just so everybody can hear properly. Give me a second here. Mute all. Continue. All right.
Have you ever been in a place where no one has ever been before? Hi, I'm Ranger Dan, and welcome to Jewel Cave National Monument. In this podcast, we'll talk about the survey and exploration of the cave, and how we discover new miles of passage every year. As volunteer cavers move through Jewel Cave, they have one goal in mind.
Yep, I think you need to share your screen because we can't see the video.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was sharing that. Share. No, I know.
It still says Kimberlyn's screen is being shared.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hang on a second here. Let me change that back.
Thank you, Sharon.
I was able to see it.
All right. Can you see Exploring the Unknown? Whoops.
Yeah.
Can you
Yes,
see
I
this
see it now.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'll restart it.
Have you ever been in a place where no one has ever been before? Hi, I'm Ranger Dan, and welcome to Jewel Cave National Monument. In this podcast, we'll talk about the survey and exploration of the cave, and how we discover new miles of passage every year. As volunteer cavers move through Jewel Cave, they have one goal in mind: to discover new passages. This also means that they get to explore unknown parts of the cave and eventually extend the cave map even further. Mapping the cave is actually quite simple, but it requires a lot of practice in order to make sure that the measurements and other related data are precise. Caving takes incredible endurance and often places physical demands on the human body. This process of mapping the cave requires a team of at least 3 cavers. The first step is to find an existing survey station on the cave map. Jewel Cave extends outward in so many directions that having these points of reference are essential to help create an accurate map. Also, for safety reasons, all caving trips require a permit that clearly identifies the members of the group, the length of the trip, the planned location, and the purpose. Depending on how far into the cave the volunteer cavers go, the survey process may not start right away. It can take up to a day to get to some places underground. Once at the desired survey station, they measure into the new passages, eventually creating new survey stations. This point-to-point process of marking cave trails creates an organized map that can be used by most cavers and park managers. Each caver carries an updated map, which allows the team to navigate and find new passages in the cave. Once the volunteer cavers arrive at a survey area, they use a variety of tools. The first tool is a compass. As one might imagine, a compass is used to figure out directions within the cave. Yes, visitors often wonder about using compasses underground. Unlike GPS units, compasses do work in the cave. Compasses provide directional coordinates, or azimuth, and they also help cavers know which direction the survey may travel. The second tool is a clinometer, which measures the angles of the passages. Once these angles are measured and collected as data, park managers can use trigonometry to determine the heights and depths of the passages, or even the entire cave. Third, a disto is used, which is a laser that measures distances from one survey station to another. Believe it or not, in the early days of cave exploration, this was done with a tape measure. Now, we simply point the laser directly at the survey station, and the device immediately shows the distance. New technology has incorporated the compass, clinometer, and disto just within the last few years. The last task is perhaps the most challenging. One caver is responsible for collecting the data and creating a sketch of everything the cavers find along the way. Using the measurements provided by the rest of the team, this caver will draw the passage walls and floor detail, such as large rocks, pits, breakdown, or domed ceilings. The sketcher will also note the distance between the survey stations and the furthest points left, right, up, and down that can be seen. Like an artist, this caver translates the shape and scale of the cave onto paper. Back on the surface, the volunteer cavers enter their data into a program that creates a digital map of the cave. Surprisingly, the maps are not linear. They detail the complexity of the cave, such as the different levels, as well as the intertwined passages. Although some might assume that mapping and surveying cave passages are recreational activities, this volunteer effort is quite critical for the National Park Service. By knowing where the cave is located and its potential direction with future leads, park staff can make informed decisions that better preserve and protect this amazing resource.
All right, I'm unmuting everybody again. Yeah, that was cool. Anybody have any questions over that for Kimberlyn?
Did they say, I do. Did they say that everything was voluntary?
Yeah, so aside from Ranger Dan, and we had one more staff member that was mainly helping out with our cave renovations. He's been here for almost probably 2 years, I want to say. They are pretty much the only paid staff that go down there. So we do have a really, really good local team where we get volunteers and I'll say, hey, how about on September 28th, let's go and we're going to try to, get from this point to this point, because that's where we left off. Of course, this is a fictional date since we aren't doing any exploration right now because of COVID and because of our elevators getting worked on over the winter. So we're going to fictionally use last year's September 28th date to where we got mile 208.5. But there is a lot of kind of permits that go into it, surface contacts, all of, kind of the paperwork on their end. But the cavers can spend up to 4 days and 3 nights mapping those areas down there in the cave. But for the most part, it's just people that are really, really passionate about caving. And they're the ones that'll, go down there and kind of see what they can find.
Yeah, I think that's great.
How many volunteers are there?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I know there's at least a handful that are here for almost every trip. As for total amount, I do not know.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't mean to stump you.
Yeah, you're good.
And so you mentioned it's 280.
208.5.
208.5. So is that like, do they know that's the end, or are they still finding new?
So based off of airflow studies, and they have an anemometer that's in our historic area, so that measures airflow, and they'll typically every year it's a German scientist that comes out here, and it's kind of his baby to deal with, but he'll go and download all the data and kind of keep it up to date. But that 208.5 miles is only an estimated 3 to 5% based off of those airflow studies.
Interesting.
So there could be hundreds or thousands of miles. We kind of get the question too of like Jewel Cave and Wind Cave, they're pretty close. Do they connect? And you'd think for the airflow studies, maybe, but we really don't know because of how far the cavers have to go. And they're all starting pretty much from our elevator location in the visitor center here and then caving out from there.
Yeah.
So hopefully in time, they'll be able to find more areas, maybe make new entrance ways. I'm kind of a small fry, so it's not up to me to say, oh yeah, we're gonna, put in entrance right here.
Sure.
But it is kind of one of those great questions where once you keep exploring, you're kind of past what is reasonable. What do you do? So it's kind of one of those great open-ended questions.
You keep pushing on to 500 miles or
So you said they can be down there, it can take days for them to get there. So obviously they spend the night, is the air quality fine for them, or do they develop like trouble breathing or?
So the airflow is completely fine. Thanks to our natural entrance being so large, that is kind of the way for air to get through. I mean, there might be smaller areas that you and I can't climb through, which I suppose the airflow could flow in and out. But via that natural entrance, there's enough of an exchange where no matter how far, how deep you've gone based off of what we found, you don't really have to worry. And it's interesting to me because on like the Wild Caving tour, there's a place called Hurricane Corner where it's a small area. It's about the size of our Wild Caving block, so about 8.5 by 24 inches. And because it empties into a super huge room that's on the other side, you can feel that airflow pretty well. Versus if you're on like a scenic tour, even though you're almost right there, because the rooms are so large, you don't feel that exchange of air.
Yeah.
Lantern tours, you are in that main entrance, so you definitely on a hot summer day, can feel it go from 95 outside to the constant 49 degrees inside the cave.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not claustrophobic really, but I don't think I would want to be down there for days.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of mental and physical stamina, because like you have to be okay with the dark. You have to be okay with the narrow spots and the high spots, which that'd be my problem. I don't like heights. But you have to be, super physically fit, and then knowing that, hey, you're going to be camping in the cave, and you take snacks and water down there, but then also everything you take down has to come back, and that includes human waste, which is also where I call it, and I don't want to do that. But yeah, it's definitely kind of one of the more extreme camping variations, I'd probably say, but it's also neat because we have quite a few camps that are down there. There's about 3 or 4 of them, and they do have sleeping bags and little camping stoves, and the cavers will wear like little hats and little jackets since it is 49 degrees.
Yeah.
But it is pretty impressive just that they're that determined for exploration to even put camps in and to keep going and branching off from there.
That's cool.
How long can you stay in the cave?
4 days and 3 nights maximum.
That's all they'll allow?
Yep. And the main factor, the main factor is mainly bringing back human waste.
Sure.
Because it's a small pack that you go in caving with. And so if it's any larger, like I always tell kids, think of your school backpack full of books. That's not going to fit going through the cave. So they're kind of these like long, skinny packs so that you can move the little clips around. So if you want it to be like normal backpack style, if you want to make a messenger bag, kind of whatever variation, just so it doesn't fall off of you into the cave.
Yeah.
But they generally only kind of hold those bare essentials.
Are there any water sources in the cave at all?
There are. So back in 2015, they discovered 3 underground lakes. So from kind of the highest point in the cave down below, it's about 600 feet. So that's how we know where the water table is. But there are areas that they do kind of regularly, I should say, collect water from, so that if the cavers are camping, there's a point where might take several months, but they can drink the water, and it is naturally purified since the cave is made out of limestone. So I've never had any cave water to drink, but it does make it easier because then it's less things that the cavers would have to take down with them.
Yeah. I'm assuming the water sources are not large enough to do cave diving in.
So some of the lakes are, but then the threat is you're covered in manganese and other impurities, and nothing has been in those lakes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the difficult thing is, hypothetically, you could, scuba dive or kayak in them, I guess, if you wanted to, but then what the cost of those actions are just for the sake of research.
What are you introducing to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So how were the caves formed and when were they discovered?
Yeah, so the cave, if we kind of jump way, way, way back in time, kind of past the dinosaurs age, over 350 million years ago, there was a shallow sea that covered from Canada down to Mexico. And then if we kind of fast forward in time to about the time of the dinosaurs, we start to get the uplift that created the Black Hills and the Rocky Mountains. So to a degree, we're kind of a sister range to them, but we're not quite as high. So as kind of the mountains are forming, the water level is starting to go down. So our resource management team, they've estimated that it's about 30 million years ago, whenever the water actually starts to form the cave itself. Because like I mentioned, our cave is made out of limestone, but the water, it has carbonic acid in it, which sounds super scary, but that's what's in everyday pop. So things that would rot your teeth out is what made our cave and the crystals in it. So the water was so super saturated that as it kind of carved out those channels there within the limestone, it also precipitated onto the walls and started to let the crystals grow. So I think of it as making iced tea mix, and you should put in this much mix, instead you put that much mix, and you stir it all up. It gets to a point where there's just a bunch of mix on the bottom because the water can't absorb it. Just envision the mix on the bottom sticking to the sides, and that's pretty much how the crystals formed. So we get kind of that, early, super early history. And if the cave, is still underwater, which with the lakes it definitely is, that's still actively being formed. But the first people to see it haven't been until 1900 with the Michaud brothers. They were riding horseback through Hell Canyon. They thought they heard something. They went and they found a hole that's about yay big, so about the size of a park ranger hat. And they thought, interesting. Went back home, came back with dynamite of all things, since it's 1900. And they kind of blasted that hole bigger and then kind of explored from there. But since it was 1900, the people that are going into the cave, they don't have nice, shiny, brand new flashlights. They have candles. And so, those explorers and, the Michaud brothers, the other people they filed their claim with for mining, they are using old-fashioned candles. And since the cave is a breathing cave, the possibility of that light blowing out is kind of high. And so that's why only about 2 miles were discovered up until the 1950s, 1960s with Urban Jan Kahn.
And exploring a new cave, you would have to be careful with an open flame, I would assume.
Yes.
Because you don't know if there's any gases in there. Or...
Yeah, because the Michaud brothers, their goal, more or less, was thinking, okay, well, lead in Deadwood, they're gold rush towns, super awesome, super popular. I bet we can find gold. And the answer is no. There is no gold, no rubies, no emeralds, nothing. And so even though they had that claim, they kind of went forward to develop it for tourism, because if Wind Cave could do it and they became a national park a few years prior, or I guess we're looking forward into the future from 1900, it would have been a few years prior. But thinking if they could do it, why couldn't the Michauds? Well, you're out here in Black Hills. Custer is 13 miles away. Newcastle, Wyoming is about 23 miles away. And there is nothing in between here and there. And so, the explorers, it was a bit more difficult just to even get interest until they built a lodge, because you are literally out in the middle of nowhere. Even still today, there's some hiking trails, but if you want other kind of like sites to go visit, there's nothing really.
Are there primitive camping sites there?
Not on site here.
Not on site? Okay.
Nope. There are sites in Black Hills National Forest that aren't super far out from the cave. And back with the 1930s with our ranger cabin, there was a campground.
Okay.
I don't know when exactly that disappeared, but now we kind of give people the boot if they try to camp out in their parking lot.
Sure.
So it'd be nice having a campground.
All right.
And Wind Cave's not too far away, and there's camping
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You could camp there and just drive over. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one other question.
Sure.
Is there a purpose for a cave? Is there a benefit to having a cave? And do you understand what I mean? Why should
An ecological purpose.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess for us, I know, it's the human spirit to go and explore and find cool things. But even just from kind of a natural perspective with like the bats, without the cave entrance and probably without it being kind of exploded and then further expanded back in the 1930s by the CCC, it does provide, really great habitat for them. And I will say too, we get a lot of visitors that they stop here and they say, okay, I saw the sign, what is this? Or I saw the sign and where is the cave? And it's like, we're on top of the cave. But it was kind of with Theodore Roosevelt, his goal to designate all of these very interesting places, whether it was historical significance, scientific significance. And so kind of going back to the reports that he must have been given, he acknowledged that with the crystals that were found here and kind of the remote nature of the cave, that it should be protected. And throughout time too, as kind of our boundaries with the cave network, knowledge have expanded, they've also kind of swapped land off with the Forest Service. So there's definitely that friendly relationship of, hey, our cave is all of a sudden going this way and your land's this way. And so they'll kind of pray through a lot of paperwork, go through and make those adaptations, because it is kind of one of those last great frontiers where we literally have no idea what can be under there.
Yeah.
We're not like Wynn's Cave, where Wynn's Cave has a really beautiful Lakota origin story, having to deal with their cave. We don't have kind of the Native American history that they do. It's more or less like, hey, there's these crystals, they could be pretty important. Kind of let's see what there is. But since that point that we were designated as a national monument, I think definitely the understanding, kind of love of the cave has grown, because without that, we might just be some hole in the ground that nobody knows about, or maybe people have, maybe explored and said, it's just a cave in a hill, whatever. And so it's pretty impressive just seeing that, throughout time, I feel that with Visitation, at least, too, we're getting more and more and more popular, which is great. But then we also run into, once you explore as enough as you can, what do you do with the entranceways? Do you try to find new routes to accommodate more people? So I feel like throughout the 1960s, 1970s to today, thanks to Urban Jan Khan and their caving experiences, that they've kind of helped to foster that kind of creative spirit, and plus to getting people that are cavers that say, hey, I'm from Pennsylvania, but I want a cave here too. So I think it's definitely been a good community just to kind of get people more interested in protecting that resource.
Cool. Anyone else have any questions? If not, we'll move on to the other video. No? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and mute everybody again. Whoops, I gotta share. Share. Boom, boom.
Are you planning on visiting Jewel Cave National Monument? If so, there are a number of tour options available for any physical ability. Hi, I'm Ranger Dan, and in this podcast, we'll show you the different types of tours you can take underground. Unlike some parks where visitors are able to walk themselves through the cave, all tours at Jewel Cave are ranger guided. If you are traveling to the monument in the future, here are some informational items to help plan for an efficient and memorable cave experience. The most popular tour for guests is the 1/2 mile scenic tour. This ranger guided activity takes visitors on an 80-minute adventure over 300 feet underground. Some of the most famous and signature formations, such as the calcite crystals, stalactites, stalagmites, and the ever-popular cave bacon, can be found along the tour route. This modern route offers electrical lights along a concrete pathway with multiple stairs, handrails, and platforms. This tour is moderately strenuous and is not recommended for those with mobility issues. The scenic tour is offered throughout the year. However, seasonal limitations may exist. Some limitations also exist with respect to infants and young children. To ensure that you are fully prepared for this tour, we encourage guests to contact the Visitor Center for updated tour times and current regulations. The Accessible Discovery Talk is a 20 to 30-minute presentation that takes visitors into one of the main rooms of Jewel Cave. This is a wonderful way to introduce young kids to the underground environment, and it also allows those with mobility issues to experience the cave. Although strollers are not allowed, a wheelchair is available at the Visitor Center for anyone needing assistance. During the summer months, the other cave tours can often fill to capacity, leaving just the Discovery Talk for those who arrive later in the day. Maybe you would like to take a step back in time. If so, you should consider the Historic Lantern Tour. Led by park rangers wearing a 1941 National Park Service uniform, this 1 hour and 45-minute tour will lead visitors into the original entrance of Jewel Cave. The experience starts at the historic ranger cabin, built by the Civilian Conservation Corps in 1936. From there, visitors trek a short distance into nearby Hell Canyon, where Jewel Cave's natural entrance was discovered back in 1900. Rather than electrical lights, oil lanterns are used to illuminate the path, to recreate the same experience as the early years. This tour is strenuous and goes through some undeveloped parts of the cave with narrow passageways and low ceilings. Since hibernating bats use the historic entrance in the off-season, these tours are only offered during the summer months. An age restriction is in place for this tour, and it is not recommended for visitors with a fear of tight spaces. For those seeking adventure, the Wild Caving Tour is the best way to be immersed in Jewel Cave. Guided by experienced and trained cavers, this 3 to 4 hour off-trail caving trip will create memories for a lifetime. Participants can expect to climb a 30-foot rope assist, squeeze through tight openings, and scramble over massive boulders. This experience is not conducted within a developed area of the cave. There are no lights, platforms, or concrete pathways. Due to the strenuous features of the route and physical requirements needed for a safe caving trip, participants on this tour are required to squeeze through an 8.5-inch by 24-inch concrete block just outside the Visitor Center. The Wild Caving Tour is not recommended for anyone with health, mobility issues, or those with claustrophobia. This tour is only offered during the summer season, and reservations are required. Most important to know, cave tours are routinely sold out from May through late September. Visitors who arrive without reservations may find themselves with limited or sold-out tour times. Because of this, we encourage guests to plan ahead and use the monument's website to learn about the reservation process. Like many parks and monuments, Jewel Cave sees an increase in visitation most years. Due to limited staff and tour times, we cannot accommodate everyone. We will continue to do our best, but we appreciate your time in learning about the different cave tours in advance. If you have further questions about tours or tour times, please contact the front desk at the Visitor Center. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the tours at Jewel Cave. We hope this information provides for an enjoyable and memorable park experience.
All right. Participant list, unmute. All righty. Does anybody have any questions about that?
How far away is it from here? From Kansas City? Or
I want to say it's about a 14-hour drive because I've done the drive from Kansas City to here. But yeah, I like the reactions too with the cloud caving portion of the video. But yeah, that's one heck of a tour.
That actually looks really fun, but at my current age, I don't know that I would really want to do it. 20 years ago, I would have done it without a problem.
I kind of suspect that this video tour is the best way for most of us with ataxia to visit the cave.
There is an elevator though. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Kimberlyn?
Yeah, so we do have elevators that go down for our scenic tours and for our discovery talks. So elevator ride is about 30 seconds or so, but that first round takes you down about 240 feet into that first room. And so you do get to see more or less, a lot of the features that you would on a scenic tour, minus stalagmites and stalactites for discovery talk. But we have newer cave renovations than what's in the podcast. But we do have now 2 really, really nice platforms that are more suited for viewing up close versus having all the stairs. Because now we went from 200 and, let me rack my brains here, not 200, sorry, 721 stairs to 734 stairs. Say more stairs, how exciting. But with our discovery talks, you do get to learn a lot about the cave and kind of see the locked area, different colors, and the crystals. Whereas for the scenic tour, you also get to see the stalagmites, stalactites, the bacon. And it kind of expands a little bit more on that as well. But we also do have more video tour options. Our park film is also on our official NPS website, so you can definitely watch that from home. In a normal environment here, we would have it playing in our theater. That does give you a good idea, but fortunately, yeah, we do have the elevators take you down, pick you back up, take you back to the top.
When it's not COVID-19.
Yes,
So,
yeah, we haven't had tours for about a year. So it's been interesting because we were finishing up cave renovations, and then woohoo, we get COVID, so we can't do any tours. And this winter, they're doing work on the elevator shaft, kind of just some love and care on that. So hopefully next spring we'll have all brand new stuff. Hopefully we'll be able to run tours again. So it's been kind of sad where people come here and they're like, we want to do a tour, and it's like,
sorry,
we can't. I can't get in the cave. You can't get in the cave. Nobody can get in the cave.
Interesting.
It is impressive that when it does become up and running again, the elevator takes you to a very impressive large chamber that's accessible.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So Lori, in answer to your question, I just looked up on Google Maps. From Omaha, it's about 8.5 hours, and from Kansas City, it's about 11 hours. So you could do a trip you could drive up there in a day. It'd be a long day, but you could drive up there.
Well, I just think that we need to get together with you two and make a trip.
It sounds like fun.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of fun. Do you guys do group tours? Like, instead of like everyone like signing up for times, like just take one big group or whatever?
So normally we do take reservations, and it'd be something more that Bradley would know than I would, since he's the one who gets to deal with it. But if there is like a special group request, as long as it's not like, hey, we're having a family reunion with 27 people that want to go on tour, for that I would say, okay, get a reservation, we can't do anything.
Sure.
But if it is kind of different than that, scenario-wise, he'd be the one who would know kind of more info. And I know, like right now, we're working on like, what if we use rec.gov? What if we still use our current system? So it's kind of a big up in the air for how exactly we're going to be processing them and who it goes through.
Sure.
But for groups, we definitely do group tours. On average, like 20 people could go on a discovery talk and 30 could go on a scenic tour.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of our like spouses would probably be able to do the scenic tour and do the steps and stuff. Where the Ataxians, we could do the discovery piece and what the more accessible pieces.
Yeah, and I've definitely had families that have done that where, there's some people they're like all gung-ho about the scenic tour. And so they'll go, let's just say 10 a.m. and it's an hour and 20-minute long tour. So they're out by 11:20. And then let's just say that there's 11 o'clock discovery talk. So the people that don't want to do a scenic tour might go on the discovery talk so that they're not waiting that full hour, hour 20 before the other half of their group show up. So I've definitely had groups where they'll kind of split it, and then whoever's comfortable with whichever, that's what they'll do.
Skippy wants to do that the wild cave thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to build myself a little 2x4 thing to crawl through first to make sure that I can do it.
Yeah, it's one of those fun things where normally, the first time I tried to go through that block, you could try to go through like Superman and put both your arms up. You do one arm up, one arm back like you're swimming. That's the way to go, because otherwise it'll bulk out your chest and more often not get stuck.
Yeah.
So I learned, for me, if I try to Superman it, I don't fit. If I do it the other way, I will fit.
Well, and both arms forward, it's hard to grab something and pull forward. So this way you can push and pull at the same time. And the shoulders kind of twist and And it's 8 by 24?
Yep, 8.5 by 24.
Okay.
You tell us it's a goal.
Easy.
He gets back pain from cleaning the toilet, okay? So
too funny.
So I had a question about, like, on the East Coast, a lot of, it's like caverns.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between caverns and caves, or is it synonymous?
Not really. So I know people too also think about like Carlsbad Caverns and why is that a cavern and we're a cave, Wing Cave is a cave. It's, I think if anything that, those very, very large wide open rooms, which we have, but we also have kind of smaller passageways, but it's kind of tomato. They're not necessarily the one's better than the other. Because I know, like, since I'm from the East Coast, that there's Luray Caverns, there's Skyline Caverns, there's Laurel Caverns, whereas out here it's Wind Cave, Jewel Cave, Rushmore Cave. It's all the various phrasings, but I have a feeling it's just like whichever name sounds cooler.
I know, like
it's not
in
super
scuba
different.
diving, there's a difference between describing a cavern and a cave. So if you're scuba diving underwater and you find an opening into a wall like that,
Interesting.
Because there's a certification for cavern diving and there's a certification for cave diving. Cavern diving means that you're within 150 linear feet of the surface. So you can go into an opening, but you can still get directly to the surface if you need to. Whereas cave diving, there is no direct way to the surface. You have to go back out the way you can. So that's the difference in diving. I don't know if the actual definition of...
And by the way, people die cave diving.
Oh, yeah, it's super dangerous.
Yeah.
Guess who wants to do it?
No, not me. I do a lot of stupid things, but not that. Oh, my. Well, if nobody else has any questions, I would like to thank you, Kimberlyn, for joining us today and giving us your insight. It was very fun.
It's very pretty.
Yeah. We'll have to, after all of this COVID nonsense goes away, we'll have to look into maybe doing a long weekend trip up there or something.
I think so. I think it'd be right.
Somebody's asking a question in the chat. Oh yeah, so anybody on here that joins our meetings regularly that doesn't normally join our meetings regularly, if you would like to share your name and address in the chat.
I have information for Francis and for Lloyd, but I don't for Mike Lafferty.
Because that way we can put you on our mailing list for other things that we're doing as well. So again, it's not necessary. It's just if you would like to. Anyone else have any questions?
Linda has all of our
Yeah.
Kansas City stuff, right?
Yes, I
yeah.
have it. I don't for Mr. Lafferty. Is that?
Yeah.
Is he listening?
I don't know. Well, we can always get that from Kansas City anyway. So, all right, cool.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I think that's it.
Everyone have a good day, weekend.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, London Skippy,
Thank you, and you too.
Nancy, and everybody. Thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
thanks,
you.
Joel.
Thanks,
Thank
Nancy.
you,
for
Nancy.
See you
saying
soon,
that.
Francis.
Skippy, everybody. See ya.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Oh, it,
Oh, I'm doing something incorrectly by accident.